Hello friends, my name is Marinette, and every year I reach out to different contributors within the book community and ask them for their favorite and least favorite picks for the year. I love putting together these collaborations, and I love getting all of these different takes on books and favorites and least favorites all in one shot. Today we'll be talking about our favorite books of 2017.
Hello everyone, my name is Chloe from the Booktube channel BrunetteBibliophile, and my favorite book that I read in 2017 was Tash Tolstoy by Kathryn Ormsbee, and this book was one of my favorites because it was engaging, it was entertaining, it had amazing LGBT rep, as well as a relatable character. For someone who enjoyed making a web series, I can relate to that because I enjoy making booktube videos. I absolutely loved it, and I hope you guys will pick it up as well.
Hey, my name is Mafalda, and you can find me on Twitter on @mafzucht. My favorite book of the year was Tash Tolstoy by Kathryn Ormsbee. I really liked how the characters were done. Overall, they were all really solid, and I really enjoyed the plot. I like how the plot explored like relationships between siblings, between best friends, between just overall friends, and actually like co-workers and like even romantic relationships, and like all was very solid, all was very well done. And I also love the diversity in this book. Like the main character is a daughter of like immigrants, or like she has like very strong immigrant roots in her family, and then she's also asexual, which was really cool to read about. And there's a bisexual side character, I believe. This is like a really good book that made me feel like really good, and that I thoroughly enjoyed. I have nothing else to say about it except like it was excellent. Go read it.
Hi, I'm Paige. I'm from the Minimalist Booktuber. My favorite book of 2017 was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This book might as well be called the book of 2017 because literally everybody has been talking about it, and with good reason. The family dynamics in this book are so strong. We have two strong parental figures that the main character can rely upon and that she goes to for advice, and I just want to be part of that family. I want to be a Carter. It's definitely more a character-driven book instead of a plot-driven book, and I just thought it was so well done because there's so much growth with this character. It's the honesty in the way Angie wrote this book that really resonated with me. She said in a signing that I went to that she wrote it for the 16-year-old version of herself that had no books to relate to. It was never trying to be a problem book. It wasn't trying to be political. It was just trying to tell this story about a girl and her community and her family and how they come together when one person is struggling. It was just so relatable and reminded me so much of growing up in Barbados that I am just really attached to this book.
Hi, I'm Mel, and my channel is BooksWithWings. There are only a few times in your life when you can read a book that truly represents you. My favorite book of the year, Wild Beauty by McLemore, did just that. As a bisexual Latina, it made me confront and come to terms with a lot of parts of my identity, of what I am, what I could be, and what I was. It encouraged me to be fearless, to look at the roots of my heritage and uncover all the parts, the good and the bad. It talks about immigration, racism, Latinx culture. It has a lot of queer characters, and it's about the history that people want to erase, but it's very necessary to remember, to grow as a society and to know what mistakes not to repeat. This book is about taking ownership of your body and the importance of making the decisions of what you want to do with it. It's a gorgeous book that is wonderfully told, and I think everyone should read it.
I'm Alexis. You can find me on my channel, The Sloth Reader, here on YouTube. And my favorite book of 2017 was The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. First and foremost, I really loved the diversity in this book. It features a bisexual main character, and also we got a person of color love interest, and we also got a character who suffers from seizures, and some promises of a possibly asexual character. I just found this book so much fun to read. I haven't had this much fun reading a book in a very long time. I found the writing fitting for the scandalous nature of the story, but also to be very funny. I loved the character growth of our main character, Monty. I really enjoyed the supernatural element that's woven into the road trip element of the story, and I also just love that it feels like Mackenzie Lee absolutely did her research for a novel that takes place in the 1700s. This was just such an absolute fun, funny and endearing story, and it was the 1700s road trip I never knew I wanted.
Hi, I'm Kayla and I'm from the channel Heroic Pages. My favorite book of this year was A Taste of Blood Wine by Freda Warrington. I love me a good vampire story and I haven't read enough, but I finally picked this one up. This one was written in the 90s and I enjoyed it a lot. There was a lot of drama that I unexpectedly enjoyed a lot. Like, I was living for this drama. And then like nice vampire romance, but not exactly what you expect, but kind of is what you expect. It didn't do that whole will they won't they turn the love interest into a vampire thing. That got settled quickly. This takes place in, I think, just after World War I. It's nice and refreshing to have a vampire story that's not in usual time frame, and this cover is just gorgeous. Like, I don't know why I haven't read the rest of the books in this quartet.
Hi guys, my name is Michelle and you can find me on my booktube channel called Books Michelle. So my absolute favorite book of 2017 was Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. This is definitely the best book Cassandra Clare has ever written. I think the writing is so amazing and so much better than in her earlier books. The cast of characters is amazing. They get so much character development and so much page time because this book is massive. It was just a very fun and very entertaining read. I laughed out loud many times because this book is really funny. It is also very emotional and there are some very exciting action scenes. It is a bit cheesy and it's still very much YA, but if you are a Shadowhunter fan like I am, then you will probably enjoy Lord of Shadows as much as I did.
Hi everyone, my name is Leah from the YouTube channel Drums of Autumn. My favorite book of the year was A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. This is the third and final book in the Shades of Magic trilogy and it is one of the best serious endings I have ever read. There's so many characters in this trilogy that you get invested in over the course of the story, and I thought that everybody's storyline got wrapped up so nicely. There's so much character development in this book, there's so much backstory on certain characters that makes them shine in a completely different light. There's still a couple of questions left and there is gonna be more books set in this world, but every character has an ending that feels very true to them as a character and to their storyline and their development throughout this trilogy. It just brings all of the different strings of the story together so well, and it is heartbreaking and funny and emotional. It makes you sad and angry and happy, and I just really couldn't be more thankful for the way that Victoria Schwab ended the series.
Hi, I'm Kate, and if you want to talk to me about books, you can find me on my channel, which is Kate Hickey, which is just my name, and then also on Twitter, where my handle is @Caterwall. My favorite book of 2017 was Before the Devil Breaks You by Libba Bray, which is the third in the Diviners series, and I read this whole series this year. They were all really fantastic, but I found that the third one really stepped up the game for the series. It really took it in a new direction that I wasn't expecting. I got to know the characters that I already loved so much even better. I think Libba Bray really stepped out and took a lot of narrative and character development risks that most authors I think aren't gonna take, and I think that that makes this book and Libba Bray's work stand out against all the other books that I've read this year. I absolutely loved Before the Devil Breaks You.
Hey guys, my name is Olivia and my channel is heyoliviareads, and my favorite book of 2017 was Wayfarer by Alexandra Bracken. Now this is the second book in the Passenger Wayfarer duology, and it was a really wonderful way to wrap up a really interesting, fascinating, and fun duology of books. The characters grew in ways that I thought were really interesting. The whole world and the whole story was tied up very nicely, which is hard because the world is very complex. And I thought the storytelling was great, the pacing was wonderful, and it was just everything that I could have possibly wanted in a book.
Hello, I'm Shannon and you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, my blog, all at Shannon Mead. I read a lot of amazing books this year, a lot of amazing books, but my favourite of the year definitely has to go to Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, and there's only one main reason as to why I picked that, and that is because I related to Simon so much. The thoughts that Simon has are like the thoughts that I have, and I related so badly to him, and this is the first time I have ever saw this in a book. It's the first time I have ever related to a character, so this means a lot to me. And because of that, Simon versus the Homo Sapien Stranger has become my favourite book of 2017 and maybe favourite book of all time.
Hi, I'm Rocky from the booktube channel Blonde with a Book, and my favorite read of 2017 is by far History Is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera, because this book has great male queer rep in it. It's got really great like family relationships and friendship relationships. It's got my favorite trope from best friends to romance. It's got great like flashback and flash forward dynamics in it just from like a literary standpoint, but also this book sort of fell into my lap on like the exact day I was dealing with almost the exact same thing that the protagonist was dealing with, and the book really reminded me how important literature can be in people's lives as far as reminding us that we're not the only ones going through something, and just being able to read words that resonate so deeply with what you're dealing with reminds you that someone else has to have had experienced this to be writing it and for other people to be reading it and relating to it. And it just reminded me how important writing and reading is to people's lives and just to my life personally. So it meant a lot to me, and it's definitely my favorite read of 2017.
My favorite book this year, and possibly my favorite book of all time now, is My Absolute Darling by Gabrielle Talent, which I only just read halfway through December, so I'm really glad I managed to get to it. I would include a trigger warning for abuse, but if you are okay reading about that kind of thing, if you can manage it, I would really encourage you to read this book. There are some difficult things in here because it's about this girl's life and she doesn't go through some amazing things, but her resilience is really what carried the book for me. Every character in this book felt so rich and so vivid and such complex people, and I could really see them in the world. And the thing that really made this book for me was this girl's strength and this girl's resilience. She unravels things in her mind as she tries to figure out what is okay and what is not okay and how she can deal with things, and the strength that she shows throughout this book and the way her character matures slowly throughout this book, so by the end she's almost a completely different person. It was done so well and she's a fantastic character, and that's mainly why I love this book so much.
Hi, I'm Dervla, or Red Later on YouTube, and my favourite read of 2017 is Grief is a Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. It's a book about a family dealing with death, which would be a bit depressing if the book didn't also deal with the metaphysical. The father in the novel is obsessed with Ted Hughes' crow, so when his wife dies, he imagines the crow comes to life to help the family through the grief. It's like Nanny McPhee, except instead of Emma Thompson, you get the apparition of a bird. The reason I like this book so much is because it's just relatable. It doesn't talk about grief as something that occurs in 5 stages and then goes away, and it doesn't talk about grief as some never-ending depression that you can never get out of. In this book, grief is explained as a sadness that doesn't fully go away, but dies down over time, which is exactly what grief is. I would hate for you to watch this and hear me say the words death and grief and think this book is the most depressing thing ever to exist, because I hate depressing books. So trust me when I say this book is not depressing. It is, if anything, hopeful. This book manages to find a line between quirky and dark, and instead of making you feel down in the dumps, it makes you feel uplifted. It's a book that wants to say it gets better, and that even when things are really dark and really depressing, the light at the end of the tunnel. That is ridiculously cheesy, but I can't think of anything else to say. I would definitely recommend giving this a read if you haven't already, although I wouldn't recommend reading it in public transport because you will cry and get a lot of weird looks. Unfortunately, I speak from experience here.
My favorite book of 2017 was A Million Junes by Emily Henry. When I asked people to contribute, I asked them to try and stick to only one pick, which I also want to stick by those rules, but it turned out to be a little bit more difficult this year than I imagined. But I ended up going with A Million Junes because of the effect it had on me emotionally, in addition to how beautifully crafted it was. This is a story that uses fabulism as a stand-in and as an exploration for grief. I loved all the ways that the author really talked about grief being a daily thing that you live with, and the way she used the fabulism in her story to highlight that. All the way from the big things like the way she dives into memories within the story to the little things like the cherries that taste like home. I love this book so very much, and I'm excited to read it again and again in years to come.
Hello, this is Rachel from the Shades of Orange. My favorite book of 2017 was I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This book is so hard to classify, but I'm going to call it psychological suspense with a literary bent. And if you know my reading taste, you know that this book is going to be dark and creepy. This is incredibly atmospheric. It would be perfect to read on a cold winter night because it's just so chilling. The writing is incredible. It's a very short book that really packs a punch, and it just created so many questions. It was ambiguous and weird, and I loved every minute of it. When I finished reading it, all I wanted to do was start back at the beginning and read it all again, which is a sign of a really good book. So if you haven't already, I highly recommend that you read I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid.
Hey everybody, Thomas here from SFF 180, and Martinez has made me promise to keep this short. Okay, no, I will. I promise. Okay, science fiction and fantasy for adult readers. 2017 was a year to be proud of. There was a lot of fine work from a wide and diverse array of superb talent. But if I had to pick one book from each genre, one science fiction and one fantasy, that, you know, stood head and shoulders above the pack, well, for fantasy, I'm gonna have to pick The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. Now, this is the final book in a trilogy, The Broken Earth, that was already shaping up to be a masterwork, the earlier volumes being The Fifth Season and The Obelisk Gate, but The Stone Sky took everything to the next level. How many trilogies and how many series, think about it, have you read where the ending just let you down? This is not only the opposite of that. This is just taking an already great concept and overachieving on reader expectations. And until you see it done, you never really realize how rarely it is done. So yeah, this is a trilogy that I think is going to go down as a fantasy classic in future decades. And for science fiction, well, my choice is a little bit off the beaten path. I'm going to go with Born by Jeff Vandermeer, who also wrote Annihilation, which is being turned into a movie next year with Natalie Portman. You've probably already seen the trailer for that. Born is a unique and often outrageous, definitely one-of-a-kind, post-apocalyptic story set in a ruined city following ecological catastrophe about a mother and, well, shall we say, an unusual child, a life form that this woman adopts while scavenging through the city. And I'm just going to leave you at that. But the bond that they form is actually touching. This is a book with a lot of legitimate laugh and cry moments, as much of a cliche as that sounds. It really is all about found families and bringing yourself together as a unit to sort of survive really, really bad times. And it also happens to have a giant 4-story flying bear that smashes buildings. So, a little bit of everything, and it's difficult to put into words briefly to describe the experience of it. You'll just have to experience it yourself.
Hello bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm. My favorite book of 2017 was This Mortal Coil by Emily Suvada. This book was action-packed and full of plot twists that I didn't see coming. On top of that, it's a really great science fiction based on good science, and the world that Emily Suvada created I thought was amazingly creative, and I don't know how she came up with this stuff. I'm definitely looking forward to the sequel and anything else that Emily Suvada writes in the future.
Hello fellow bookworms, it's Katie from the Mirror World here on Booktube. One of my favorite books that I've read this year was Radiance by Kathryn. This is a little bit of an odd science fiction book that is told through mixed media. One of the things that I liked especially about this book is that you kind of have to deduce the plot for yourself, because it is told through so many perspectives that there are multiple narratives. And the writing is so beautiful. It's this kind of metaphor-heavy, reference-drawing, flowery goodness that gets me every time when done well. And I will reread this book many, many times. And not just because half of the references to Greek myths and pop culture that Kathryn draws went completely over my head, but this book has this kind of layered characters and intriguing, intertwined story that I'm sure that every time I will reread this, I will discover something completely new.
Hi, I'm Alice. I don't have a booktube channel, but you can find me on Twitter at Metamorphosis. So my favorite book of the year, and with no surprise, is Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb. This is the 16th and last book in the Realm of the Elderling series, and it was fantastic. The whole, the world building is so vivid, and you can really be in this world, for the whole time, and not only because it's 16 books, you're in it from the first book, from Assassin's Apprentice. You're in that world, and you're in it with the characters, and you hurt with them, because Robin Hobb is really good to actually hurt the characters and hurt the readers at the same time. Yeah, this one I was just sobbing through the last 200 pages or something. I was actually sobbing, I couldn't read anymore because it was all blurry, but I was still reading and it was a mess. Thankfully, I had taken 2 days of work to read this book, so I hadn't any distraction. I was at home, I was crying, I didn't have to go out and cry in the subway or anything, so it was good. Perfect world building, perfect character development, and heart-shattering plots. Can you ask for more? I don't know.
Hey, my name's Tara. You can find me on YouTube at Tara Hackley. You can also find me on my other social media channels with the same name. Now I want to share with you all my favorite read of 2017, which is Sarah Nicole Lemon's Done Dirt Cheap. There are numerous reasons why I love this book, but the two main ones are, one, that our two main characters are incredibly complex and multifaceted individuals. Neither of them are the girls you would expect them to be based on first impressions or first sight, which I absolutely loved, because complex leading ladies are like my jam. And the second reason is this book is incredibly atmospheric. The atmosphere, the setting itself feels like its own character, and it's just absolutely beautifully written.
Hi, I'm Caitlin, and normally you can find me on my channel Book Chats. My favorite book of 2017 is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. I struggled for a long time with how to articulate this connection I had to this book, because on the surface I shouldn't have any connection to it at all. This book is about the Korean diaspora in Japan. It is a book that is a multi-generational family narrative with an omniscient narrator, and it just isn't the thing I normally read. And then I had the privilege of seeing the author speak at the Texas Book Festival, and one of the things she said really struck me as being kind of at the core of why this book probably connected to me as deeply as it did. She specifically discussed how she wrote the book at a reading level that would be accessible to someone who never finished their formal education in English. So someone who, for whatever reason, didn't finish out their K through 12 English classes, and maybe didn't have the same reading level as someone who did, would still be able to read and understand this book. And she spoke about how she did this because she specifically wanted to make the book as accessible as something by Toni Morrison to just any person. But I think what it did for me is that it allowed me to, instead of getting caught up in very technical writing, the writing is beautiful, but it is simple enough that you can understand it at a basic level, and then it allowed my brain and emotions to kind of grasp more firmly these incredibly new to me things that were happening. This book traverses a lot of history that I had no familiarity with, and the fact that the author chose to write at a reading level that maybe you wouldn't always associate with a big literary tome or kind of an award-nominated book is something that I think allowed me personally to connect to it more deeply. I highly recommend Pachinko by Min Jin Lee, and I really hope you, if you choose to pick it up, have a similar experience to the one that I did.
Hi everybody, my name is Rachel. I'm from Rachel's Page Turners here on the Booktubes, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite books for 2017, and that is How to Be a Boss, A Guide at Conquering Life by Lily Singh. This book is a no-nonsense, humorous, encouraging book on how to succeed in life, or more so like how to succeed in the goals that you set for yourself. Lily wanted to succeed as a YouTuber, so she provided herself as an example. So for each chapter she would write down what she wanted to do and then how she went about doing it. And I loved how towards the end of each chapter she would write a little anecdote from previous years and how she was feeling and how she was struggling with anxiety, depression, and then fast forward how well she was doing. So it was just a wonderful reminder that things do get better. Things can get better. And she was a huge believer how little things make a difference. The things that you're doing, they don't have to be giant big things. Do what you can. but definitely push yourself. The book is actually set up in these like super bright, wonderful colors like red, yellow, and she uses all these colors because these colors actually make her happy. Like the towels that she has in her closet, they're just all really bright rainbow colors. And she said this little thing actually makes a huge difference in how she like feels about the world. Like it just makes her feel better. So that's just an example how like little things can make a big difference. It definitely made me feel better. I implemented a few of those things actually in trying to like do better with my YouTube channel. It actually inspired me to get off my duff and pursue like the acting stuff that I wanted to pursue. I rated this book 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I can't say enough good things about it. I freaking love this book and I would highly recommend that you read it as well.
Hello, my name is Emma Tobias and I was fortunate enough to read a lot of really great books this year. But I decided to go with a book that spoke to me and was the most impactful read of 2017 for me. And that was Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. I'm not normally one for a self-help book or an inspirational book, but I read this book by Shonda Rhimes, who is the showrunner for shows like Grey's Anatomy and How to Get Away with Murder and Scandal, and I was completely taken aback by the effect this book had on me. This book is about saying yes to yourself, saying yes to opportunities to make yourself better, saying yes to opportunities that are hard, but also saying no when you need to. It's a book about self-care and self-care through radical change at times, self-care that will make you uncomfortable, but in the long run make you better and happier and stronger of a person. And it was a book that I needed to read this year, and I'm so thankful that I did.
Hi, I'm Linnell, and I can be found on Facebook, Twitter, and on my blog, Weekend Reader. Selecting a favorites for this video was definitely difficult, but I landed on Rupi Kaur's Sun and Her Flowers, which is the follow-up collection to Milk and Honey. I loved this collection. It covers a lot more topics, and I thought it was super beautifully done. It was the same format, still painful, still covers some tough topics, still covers traumatic experiences. So I want to put some trigger warnings. She still covers her rape and assaults. So if you are a survivor, be careful. But what I loved is that she broadens the scope of what she's covering. And I think in the climate that we're in America, the Me Too movement, this is a body of work that if you're having a hard time understanding that as a woman's issue, this body of work can help someone digest that information maybe a little bit better. What I felt in this book was there was less of maybe disassociation from the experiences. Personally, I felt like Milk and Honey, there was a disassociation from the experience, whereas in Sun and Her Flowers, there was how are these experiences impacting the way I feel about love, my understanding about relationships, and how I view friendships, and how I understand family. I thought that was a really interesting progression and a really helpful way to maybe talk about how harassment and how the devaluing of women really chips away at you. And so I thought that it was a powerful piece.
Thank you so much for watching our favorites of 2017. You can click the link on the screen to be taken to our least favorites. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon.
Yeah, Grief is Linked with Feathers. Read it, enjoy it, love it, twist it, turn it, bop it. Bye.